Right, Bafundi. This is now a dress coming from uh, an online retailer that I shan't name. And at the end of the day, I don't think you can see it on camera, but it's a little bit deerskin bar. So we're going to just give it another layer of lining so that it's not a certain kind of party. So, first is to look at the dress and just see how is this put together. You can see you've got basically a flat piece here, and this is like a cowl neck. It just turns over like that, and of course, because this, ties like so around the neck, gives a nice little cowl shape. And then here, I just go from the center back. You can see we've got these two panels here that are the same. Got a nice big panel here on the one side. And then on the other side, a little bit of a smaller panel. So if I can, I'll see how this all fits together. If I can cut this piece on the fold, and then just split it like that, not in the center, then that'll be the easiest. So I think it's an interesting conundrum where to start. I'm going to start like so, because this uses up all of this section, and then I can try and fit the other piece in that section. If I cut it like this, then there's no way I'm going to fit any other piece in that section, then I'll lose that section. Obviously I could put the top or something there, but it's just better to do it this way around. Now this, because it's kind of a very flowy, relaxed dress, I don't have to be too precious about it being 1000% exact. But of course I am going to do my best to make it with excellence. Okay, so there's our center, and I'm putting that about a centimeter off of the selvage, or the, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, like these prick marks on the selvage, on the edge of the fabric. Obviously I don't want to really include that, so I'm putting the garment about a centimeter away from those pricks. Here I'm not going to come all the way to the end. I'm going to less 20. There's no need for this to be all the way down to the bottom. Less 20. I'll probably just do a very simple overlock there. Okay. So here we go. Here's our center back. Now I'm drawing this on the stitch line. I'll add my seam allowance now. Okay, there's that. And now it comes. It's always tough to keep this line neat and flat. But again, because it's such a like a broad, flowy dress, if I make the lining a little bit smaller, then the dress, no one is going to die. Obviously, just don't want to see any gather or anything like that. So I'm just putting the pin through, marking it there. Okay, so there's my waistline. That's where the seam is. Now I can just kind of trace that line, because this line is going to be more or less straight. All the way to here. Measure 20 centimeters up. It's going to be an interesting one. I'm actually just going to pin that. 20 centimeters up. I'm just going to pin it here. Make sure I'm not causing damage to the dress. Alright, so there is my him. You can see I'm drawing this quite like a cowboy. And here, here's the seam on the side, and it is relatively straight, which is fantastic. Okay. So of course on this I'm going to put the seam allowance. I'm not going to do that right now. First I want to figure out this front portion. Can it be done just on the fold? So at the end of the day, this is not a complicated shape. So this piece, let's see, it comes from here, goes all the way around to there. So it basically comes from the side right over to the side. Interesting. Yeah, so actually I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. Because if it comes from the side to the side, that means it should be symmetrical. Yeah, I'm probably going to have to cut a separate piece for that flap over. That's fine. It's actually easier to figure out. You know, I don't have to break my brain on camera in front of everyone and just embarrass myself. Okay, so this portion, obviously on the fold, and I can put it in this direction. So I can fit this piece in here. Okay, let's get this as straight as humanly possible. Let's see if we put it here. That will be enough for 2 seam allowances. And I just want to match the seams here. So here obviously it has a lot of turn under, so I'm just going to match that on the raw edge. It does not look like it wants to fold that way. Let me just see what's going on here. That is the center. Let's just see, how does this, interesting, look at that, it actually looks like it wants to fall like this, so that, let's move this a little bit. You see, if I match this up, you can see I'm getting over here, like this fold there, but the fabric does not want. If I fold it like this, that looks to be like what the fabric wants, which is a mismatch of about, call it 13 centimeters. No, it's not, doesn't look like it's this piece, you know, cut out and then returned. You know, sometimes they cut this very skew on the factories. Let's see if I am actually seeing that, or if it's just my eyes playing tricks on me. You see, if you look up further at the top, this I think maybe is just not placed 100%. I'm going to shift this portion. There we go. And that looks, I would say, reasonably like a reasonable shape. Okay. So let's trace that out. Here's my waist. Going to be a bit cowboy there. There's that portion. I'll put just more one guideline there. And then down here on the seam, and here I can do 20 centimeters up. I suppose that one I can just 20 centimeters up. And 20 centimeters up. Okay. I want this one. So here's my center front, and it didn't look, if I draw this now, see I'm going to have a corner here, which is obviously not okay. So I'm just going to straighten that out. I don't know if that's, this is a garment. It's tough to get it to lie 100% flat. So I'm actually just going to redo that so that you have a nice curve there. This line looks reasonably straight. And again, if this is a little bit skinnier, it's really not going to be a big problem because it's such a flowy dress. So I need to now check these side seams. 68. Oh gosh, 84. What? No, I'm just reading upside down. That's 80, 85 and a half, 84. So let's check then center. It's not 87. 87. So let's go with it. 87. Increase that. Smooth it in. 87. And just smooth it in. Okay, so the last thing I want to do is just check the waist. So you can see from the zip, just going to measure all the way around. Sometimes it's easy to do a half measure, sometimes it's better just to go all the way around. Zip to zip, 70 centimeters. This is now without seam allowances. I'm going to have 14. Let's see. 32, that's 64. And I needed, what was it, 17? I'm doing too many things here. Too many things at once. $34 times 2, 68. Where did I get 70 from? Let's do that again. Maybe it just slipped in my hands. Ooh, this job can drive me crazy. Here I'm getting 71 again. Maybe that's just because I'm struggling to measure it accurately. So we do this. gives me 34 times 2 is 68. I think that's exactly what I got here. 14, 14 and a half. 32. So I need like 2 centimeters each side. So here, I only have 3 centimeters. So I'm actually just going to add 1.5 centimeters. There's my extra. I'm probably going to do a seam of 1 centimeter. Here I have a 1 centimeter seam. Here we're going to have a very interesting connection. And here I'm actually going to push that up to 2 centimeters. And then let this join out. If it's too small, I can always just tuck it away into the zip or something like that. No one will control me. I'm just going to cut on that line, and at the bottom we don't have the seam lines. So, yeah. I'm going to cut that out, and then I'll look at the next piece. So here's this, small flap that's underneath. You can see it's kind of rectangular, does flare a little bit. Now what I just realized is that it's going to be easier to do this lining portion a bit back, maybe 3-5 centimeters back, rather than spending hours and hours hand stitching it right on the edge here. Now, of course, it is something I should have figured out before I started doing this whole journey. But, sometimes you're just in a rush. These things happen. This one, as you can see, I'm being very cowboyish, marking that seam underneath. And you will see here that I didn't really accommodate for the seam allowance at the, or I didn't, well, you'll see. You'll see and judge me with judgmental eyes. It's 20 centimeters, it's here. Okay. So you see here, I didn't bring it further enough down for this piece. So I'm actually just going to add that at the bottom. I'm going to use that as my seam allowance. But now I'm just going to check what my measures are. It should be 87. This is now with the seam allowance, that's 88. Yeah, that's actually perfect. Might be a little bit long there. And over here, a little bit too short. Okay. Now it is an interesting shape that I'm seeing here, which I didn't really expect. If I look at that, it is how it's shaped. I suppose that that can fall away. Okay. So yeah, and here, also with the last piece, I just drew it straight on the seam allowance. So here I'm going to again just cut 1.5 from the seam allowance. Those dots are just going to be turned under. Here I've got my seam allowance. Here I want 1.5. And no seam allowance down the bottom. Okay. So let's look at this portion, which is going to be now the bodice. I'll cut this in half. I'll cut it on the fold. Okay, so this turn under is going to be 6.5 centimeters. Let's see, we need enough space for that. That's good. Here's my half. Now, I would expect this waistline to be reasonably straight. It does fall away a little bit, you can see there. Interesting shape. Okay. Okay, so here's the top with the fold. Here's the edges, the armhole. Here. Just get that nice and accurate. Here's the edge of the thing. There's the waist, there's the waist, there's the waist. Because obviously there we need a centimeter seam allowance. Here maybe 1.5 and 1.5 because we want to turn this in easily. In here, about 6.5. You see what I'm doing here is just not really stressing about the shape too much, just cutting it extra so that when it flips here, I'll trim that and just make it work. Okay, so here we need a centimeter to join with the skirt. Here we need 1.5 to turn under. Here we need 1.5 to turn under. And that will just be whatever it is. Okay, cutting time. If I can find my pens. So all the pieces are cut, and now we need to put it together so that it's like a mirror image of this one. Now, really, I should be unpicking this so that I could have this front layer on the front layer, back layer on the back layer, or maybe hand stitching it in here, but that is just not going to happen. So we're going to stitch it kind of like how this is and just put it in here. So the front layer will actually be on top here, and then another of this back layer at the back. It's going to give an interesting effect here, going to give like a layered effect here. So I'll tell you one thing I'm not doing is unpicking more than I need to. I do want to unpick here so that I can flip this up and join this piece, which, yeah, I mean, sometimes you just got to do those things. So at the end of the day, this is what I'm doing. I'm joining, here's the center, let's see. Okay, so here's the center front. I'm joining one back piece to that. This portion here, I'm going to overlock. Then here's the other portion of the back. Overlock, and join that to that small flappy piece on the side and overlock that edge. And then here on the bodice part, I'm just overlocking this top edge over here. And yeah, let's go and do all of that. So here's the skirt part all put together. I joined here the center back where the zip's going to go. Obviously, I'm going to iron that open in a second. So there's the zip part, and that's going to fold over in the front. These edges I'm going to leave for now in case I need to do a bit of a measurement adjustment there. So that is the skirt part. This bodice part, let's see, where is it? Okay, so here, ended up unpicking this whole side, because there you can see it's a binding that was then just turned over like that. Pin that piece of the strap there, because I don't feel like crying and trying to realign that. So what I'm going to do now is flip this like so. This front piece. So this portion, let's just see, this is now the inside. I want the right side to be facing on the inside, like that. And this portion is going to fold over. I'm going to keep this a little bit less than the garments one. And here, I can't really get into that seam without undoing the seam. So I'm going to, by hand, stitch right up against this edge and just stitch that portion in. it doesn't have to be like super secure. It's not like this is holding a seam, it's a cowl neck. So I'm going to just stitch that in. So let's say, I stitch that right in the seam there. I am going to check now the measurement of this. Now this is a little bit stretchy, so it's good if I have a little bit of extra. So this is not too bad. This gives me just that little bit of extra, um, extra give. Although I suppose the cowl neck you really don't need stretch there, but in any event, so stitch there right on the edge, flip under, and you see here's going to be my edge there that I'll then baste along on the inside, and then I'll fold that down and restitch that binding, and then this I'll just fold under like that, stitch down to there, and then I'll attach the skirt onto here. That's the plan so far. Let's see. All right, so I've got that all pinned up. Just to save my emotions, I ended up actually basting, kind of permanently stitching the straps there so that pin isn't underneath. And yeah, I'm just doing like a small stitch along here. It doesn't really matter if it comes all the way through, because at the end of the day, this is going to be stitched down anyways to the back. So if it catches that layer, it's actually totally fine. Thing is that we just want to get this as into the edge and into the corner, sure, as possible, without stitching through the wrong layer. There we go. I'll do the other side, and I'll flip that around. Like so that part's done. You see there, I just caught that band so that I don't have to stress about that. Now here, it's not really going to kill anyone that this is going to collapse under there, like so. But I feel it's not like quite as fab as it could be. So I'm just going to here and there, just catch it like that. Now this is on the inside, so it's not a drama that you're going to see that stitch. In fact, I could do it by machine, but I'm going to do it by hand. And then here, I just want to, hold on. See, I need this to really fold how it wants to fold. And fold how it wants to fold. And then I think it's going to fold okay. It's now a little bit bigger than it should be. So it falls in the neck here. I think that'll be fine. I'm just going to attach it here at the bottom, because I feel like here, if I attach that, it's going to give me a funny shape there. It's not going to fall naturally how it wants to. So I'm just going to, here, I'm going to maybe just divide them, zoom around a little bit. Yeah, and just give that a few little stitches to keep it in place. And then down here, I'm just going to baste that right in the edge there. And then, I'll sew that, but first I'll tuck that portion in. That's what's happening at this time. All right, so basting done. And something you just need to get used to with alterations and life is that nothing is 100% straight. So you see here, my turn under here on the side is like 3/4 centimeter. This side, it's maybe 1.5, almost 2 centimeters. And if you look at the length of these two back pieces, it's definitely about a centimeter difference. Look at that. So yeah, just that's just life. So yeah, here I would have preferred it not to be like as exact here, but I think we still have sufficient movement, and I tried to just add a little bit of ease as I went around, so that it can be like as eased as possible, because there is a bit of stretch in here. So we just need to make sure that the lining as well will be able to stretch, because this is not stretchy at all, but this is nice and stretchy. So I'm going to go ahead, stitch that down like so. Do that by machine. That will be tucked in, and then this I'll stitch by hand to there, and then look at the skirt portion. Suppose we can check that out now. Let's see, here we are. So here's the zip. It's going to go in like that. Something like so. Obviously that will be tucked in. I kind of want to just stitch this one time. Let's see. So you see our side panel is actually quite a bit off there. So I could tuck it in further at the zip, or do a bit of a gather here. I don't want to do too much because that ends up being too bulky. But okay, there's the side seam. Here we go around. And there's that portion of the front, which actually ends, yeah, more or less in the right place. So I think I can just shift that seam a bit forward. And this then I can now turn one. And then this portion, you can look at the zip. It's going to go around there. This seam is reasonably in place. I can just gather it a little bit. And then here's this nice extra portion. Yeah, so this actually does look like it fits nicely. I'll just turn one. That fits basically exact. So yeah, I'll iron that up and stitch this and then do that portion by hand. So there I've stitched that portion by machine, so that's done. Pull a bit of that basting out. This I'm leaving for now because I actually then can hand stitch that one time. And I trimmed this down here so it's actually the same length as the actual garment. So now let's see, if we put this together, how does it all come together? Here's the zip. So this should be at a centimeter. I'm just going to measure that with my eyes. So here I do want to add a little bit of ease. So now let's see. Okay, so this seam, I want to match with this seam. I'm going to mismatch that seam a little bit just so that kind of makes a bit more sense. Here's this edge. It's going to be right there. So those two will match. Yeah, I'm just going to mark this. There's my seam going to be. I'm going to do it from the other way around, the other side. Trying not to confuse myself with what is where. I'm just going to put this inside like that. Okay. Other end of the zip. And it will be about a centimeter seam allowance. A little bit of ease. And this seam as well, I'm going to push it a little bit forward, not by much. I want that to be around there. Here's where that's going to fall, and then my seam is going to be over here. Okay, then from there, what is my plan exactly? Now, I think in order not to have too many flappy things, I'm going to do this portion. Obviously with ease. So that comes to here, and on the front, yeah, you see that's so it's a little bit back from where this part of the dress is. But I think that's going to be fine. And then this one, yeah, also a little bit back from where this part of the dress is, but I think fine. So what I want to see is when this all comes together, what is it going to look like? Yeah, so I think it's going to be quite fun. I'm going to just move it like this so that we can get a better idea. So yeah, see, like here's the waist. This is kind of on the like 3/4 on the right thigh. You have one piece opening, one piece opening, one piece opening, one piece opening like that. And that's quite fash. And you know, for her, she actually felt this was fine when she walked, but it exposed her a little bit when she sat. So she asked us to just stitch it down about 18, 20 centimeters. So this will actually be closed anyways. And then underneath you'll have those glares. I think it's going to be cute. So what I want to do here is stitch by machine these two together so that I can flip this up, stitch that by hand. I wonder if this I will stitch by hand. Let's think about it. So obviously there we've got a seam allowance to stitch onto. Oh, I don't see why I can't stitch that by machine. No, just put it there, stitch on that stitch, and it will also give me a chance to fix that little drama that's occurring there. And then, you can see that, I'm sure. Then, I think that will save me a little bit of time. So, let's see. Off with the pens, I'm going to just, before I get lost about what's where, what I'm doing how, I'm going to just pin that to where I marked it. Yeah, I'll take the rest of this off, and like this, like I'm doing it now, stitch like that. So I've sewn now the top portion and the bottom portion together. And now I'm just going to go around here and just, in a way, tack this together. I'm going to use a back stitch so that we still have a little bit of stretch to the stitch. And this will be permanent, so I'm going to do this in a black. And you see there's just a little bit of extra on the lining side. So I'm going to go around, just do a back stitch on that. I suppose you could do this by machine with a zigzag, but I mean, you know me, so I'm going to do that by hand. See here, I actually stitched it on this top stitch there, and that's folding down there. This I then attached just with some back stitches. That's folding in there. Honestly, between you and me, I don't know what happened, but somehow I got that all twisted. So I had to unpick this center back. I really don't know how it happened. Stop judging me. So now I'm just going to go and close this. I suppose I could stitch that by machine, but I'm rather going to do it by hand. Surprise. And just close that little little gap in there. I'm going to close that. And then after I've rejoined the center back, I'll then come along and just stitch that by hand. And then the last thing I'll do, like I was saying, she feels this is just a little bit too exposed. So I'll just stitch that down and then give a hem on this lining. Just an easy 1-1 hem over there. And then that'll be that. Well, Bafundi, I thought I was done. And then I was just steaming this on the dress. And I mean, this, it's like, it could be a style, but I think maybe this lady would kill me if I just left the dress like that. So always check, because this must collapse here. And because of now the extra piece of lining that we put in there, it's not wanting to do it. It's wanting to just do this. Look at that. Fashion baby. So I'm just going to sort that out. And then I'll finally be done. Can you even believe, Bafundi, after all of that drama of getting this piece right up there, I now have to go around and just undo it. But this is how it goes. And yeah, I keep repeating, just check, 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 check. So at the end of the day, it's better we find it and fix it than that the client has to find it. So I think just cutting off this extra little piece here will be enough. I could try and overlock that. I'm not sure if it's even really feasible. Especially I'm in a bit of a time crunch. This lady's actually arriving in a few hours. I think it's going to be fun. I'm going to put this back on the mannequin. Just check that out.